Welcome back to the special transmission on Azad Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly elections. We are now joined by Barrister Safiur Laghori, who is a legal expert and a regular on this channel and my programs as well. Barrister sir, thank you very much for being part of the program. Hasnat Sheikh also joins us, who is a political analyst, and he is, last time if you remember, came to the program, and I think in that panel he outscored everybody. He actually had his homework on Kashmir. Thank you very much, Hasnat, for being part of the program. We will be momentarily joined by another guest who is going to join us from Kashmir, a journalist, and he's going to join us on telephone. The moment he joins us, I'm going to introduce him as well. But with your permission, Barrister Saab, let me start with Hasnat Sheikh. Hasnat, your take so far. One, the climate in which elections took place, and who is going to actually be leading at this moment. Although we know the trend, there are many, adages that tell you that there might be some kind of trend, but who is leading right now?
Currently, as was expected and predicted by a lot of polls, PTI is leading in Azad Kashmir in most of the seats.
Comfortably?
It is not very comfortably, however. There are small margins, but there might be huge upsets in the Muzaffarabad division, where the PTI candidate might win after about 3 elections, and the current Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir might actually lose both of his seats. That's what the condition looks like right now.
Right. PMLN seems to be trailing not on number 2 as number 2. It is number 3.
That's the situation at this point.
Why?
People's Party seems to have reinvigorated itself in Azad Kashmir's elections, and so has Muslim Conference, the local party in Azad Kashmir. And they've taken up the space where PMLNs come at the experience that they've given to the Kashmiri people, the promises that they made, and generally the trend of Nawaz Sharif's government in Pakistan that had influenced the people in Azad Kashmir has actually given the results already early on in this election.
PTI's promises and People's Party's promises, how are they different from PMLN's performance?
First thing is practicality. The PMLN promises were words that weren't very practical, and at the end of the day, what they resulted in was Nawaz Sharif calling Modi over to his personal weddings. This ruined the morale of Azad Kashmir's people.
And recently, day before yesterday, the picture, Alhamdulillah Mohib, that picture, and then today a candidate of their party, Gujar, actually stated
invoking India into the game. And he compared Pakistan and the election.
Let us go into that useless rhetoric they used. My question at this moment is, how are they actually promising to resolve the issues of Kashmiri people? Is there a difference, or a local program doesn't matter?
There is a huge difference of approach in Imran Khan's approach towards Kashmir. He recently went there, and he actually promised to the people that whatever side you want to pick in a plebiscite, I'm with you. He didn't become a leader to the dispute, he became a party to the dispute. He stood there with the Kashmiri people and reflected a collective conscience with those people. And the people that vote on the national issue, he won them over in his last term.
Development?
There's a few differences.
Health? How?
Now, Imran Khan's vision in development is very different in comparison with, and specifically health is very different in comparison with PMLN's. PMLN promised infrastructure. It did deliver in Pakistan. It could not deliver in Azad Kashmir. Unfortunately, in Azad Kashmir, the paradox is People's Party delivered more infrastructure than PMLN.
And we are going to talk about that. Let me bring in Barrister Saab, who is actually making faces at this stage. Barrister Saab, your take on the today's elections. There is one sad incident in Kotli where 2 people died, and 2 people from PTI died, right? And it is astounding that People's Party, which actually presents itself as the voice of moderation, its workers were firing at PTI. So your overall assessment of the election?
And it's not just PTI workers who have died. Unfortunately, I also read the news of 4 military soldiers dying.
That was not violence, unfortunately.
Yes, it was an accident. They fell into a ravine. Yes, but I think the question is very relevant about the kind of animosities that have developed between these parties. And it is absolutely disgusting to see that we have an all-important election in this time around in Azad Kashmir. It's important because this is the first election that's taking place in Azad Kashmir ever since the illegal annexation of Jammu Kashmir by India.
Right.
And so obviously all
Occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir by India. And so everybody is obviously watching these elections. And the kind of terrifying political rhetoric that I've seen come out. For instance, it all started when Prime Minister Imran Khan went to Kashmir and started saying that
It started with that.
It started with that. So if you were to follow the
By this
timeline,
time, you must have developed a blind spot for what Mariam Nawaz was saying.
but hear me out here. So I think to my understanding, the timeline starts when Imran Khan in his jalsa stated that Mariam Nawaz's son was playing polo on ill-gotten wealth. In response to which Mariam Nawaz stated that Imran Khan's children are growing up.
Started following the elections a bit later, because at the very start she went there and she was, she went
Vicious, absolutely. This is something that I'm agreeing with through and through, because what we have seen.
Does it not bring you back to the question whether Pakistan's national parties or federal parties be allowed to participate in Kashmir's elections? Because when they go there, they take their own
and not just political rhetoric. We're talking about personal agendas, like the comments that have been made by one of the ministers again on Mariam Nawaz's cosmetic surgeries and telling her that he'll slap her was absolutely atrocious. This is
You're talking about one man.
One man,
but we are talking about two people killed by the same party that you are criticizing.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm agreeing with you 100% that what we see is
you tell me you are agreeing with me. I don't know what you are agreeing to, by the way.
I am agreeing with I am agreeing with the idea that Pakistani political parties going into Azad Kashmir with their personal agendas, personal animosities, and taking them over into the realms of the Kashmiris and making Kashmiris a part of their petty fights is something that is absolutely disgusting. And I feel like Kashmiris deserve better. Everything that they've been through, they should not be becoming party to the kind of regional and political issues that local Pakistanis have, local Pakistani family feuds have. Which have nothing to do with an ordinary Kashmiri.
Right, Pakistani politics is not merely about family feuds. It is more about.
I would disagree with that. It really looks like it's just family feuds all across.
Yeah, I wanted to take it to the gangster politics, but your choice. If you want to stick to family feuds, you do.
Sure.
Let me go back to Hasnat Sheikh. One curious thing that we have observed in the past, whichever party actually ran in the elections, they would actually have identified their prime ministerial candidate. PTI is leading without a clear nominee. Why so?
This is a very interesting situation for PTI locally. So when the elections neared, PTI suddenly had their wild card come out, Tanveer Ilyas, from a huge investor and also a huge political figure from Punjab, Islamabad. He has an influence here. But he originally hails from Rawalakot, where his cousin recently, who passed away in a very sad accident, who used to contest from the Muslim conference that he used to play. He came out as a very effective player for PTI, and he actually went to all of these constituencies and he took over Barrister Sultan's race. So at this moment, PTI can't risk actually declaring that one side, and on the other side of it, it's actually beneficial because it gives every candidate, every senior candidate that push. Otherwise, the People's Party did say it, but it didn't say it too. It pointed at Faisal Rathod, but it also kept a hand on the shoulder of their party president in Azad Kashmir. And so did PMLN. They already have a de facto prime minister, उन्हीं wo aage leke chalna chahenge. But in this specific context that we're talking about, PTI could not risk actually declaring a name because it had a very efficient wild card come out. And I think if today they bring a massive turnaround in the results, it might go to a lot to the credit of Tanveer Ilyas, who is their wild card from Punjab.
And the wild card may become prime minister?
There is high chances of that, and that might
yes, but an argument about moneyed class and their influence in politics. I mean, Nawaz Sharif. What was PTI's argument against Nawaz Sharif? Or even People's Party's argument against Nawaz Sharif? That they use money. And now there is a rich guy who can become
The
prime
richest
minister.
Kashmiri.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
it not
but just
interesting?
because he's rich, it doesn't mean he's using money. Where does
I
that
mean, if
happen?
you are rich, do you use voodoo magic to
No,
actually
no,
draw
but
people if you are not-
everybody uses money, sir. Everybody
But
uses those resources
Barrister
that they have.
Sultan is a former prime minister who has actually practically raised the party, and he actually, in the previous assembly, PTI would not have voiced had he not gone
I'd
through
like
the
to question
by-election.
that statement. Barrister Sultan, the former Prime Minister, credited for running PTI in Azad Kashmir, only had 2 seats last election.
Yeah,
2 seats last election.
first he did not actually come from PTI. He resigned from the other party he was heading, joined PTI and came back.
Sir, from 6 other parties, sir.
Okay.
He had joined 6 parties. He had changed 6.
No, I'm talking about the last
party he had,
Yeah.
left one party, you can only be a member of one party at a
Yeah.
time. But Barrister Sultan is a career politician.
Yeah.
And if a career politician is beaten by a career businessman, the common man doesn't really have an issue with that.
Okay. That is, I mean, politics is not business. If you are a businessman, beat me in business, not in politics.
But the Tanveer family has deep roots in Azad Kashmir.
Okay.
They, without starting their political career, they're
Then
already,
what is their promise?
sorry.
What is their promise?
Their promise is a corporate change in Azad Kashmir.
Okay.
Their promise is to bring investment in Azad Kashmir beyond just tourism.
Okay.
Their promise is to support local businesses. They've already made a 200-bed hospital before they came into government in Ravnakot. So their promise is a result of investment from Islamabad, because they're already well established in Islamabad Chamber of Commerce. They're also well established in different institutions in Pakistan, and he's also served in government in Punjab. So their promise is to deliver actual empowerment, economic empowerment to the people, and they've practically done it.
And I'm going to talk about that later in the program as well, but let me welcome the third guest who joins us on telephone. Ahmed Lateef Saab, a senior journalist, joins us from Kashmir. Let me ask him about how the election went today, and also who's going to win. Ahmed Saab, thank you very much for your time. How did the election proceed, and who's winning?
Thank you, Farrukh, and Assalamu alaikum to all the guests there. There are a few things that we must celebrate about this election, and there are a couple of things that need to be discouraged and rectified. So first, let me tell you what we should celebrate about this election. Number one is the fanfare and lackluster that is overwhelming. I mean, I have traveled the length and breadth of Kashmir from Muzaffarabad to Neelam and then from Chakoti to Ba, and I have witnessed the scenes which I have never seen. I belong to Karachi. I have never seen the kind of enthusiasm, the passion for elections in even the big cities like Karachi, Lahore and Peshawar. So this thing I congratulate the people of Kashmir. They have sent a very good message across the border. The elections are held like in this way, such a funfair, such a lackluster, a feverish pitch. And even I travel to Kale, that is on just near the line of control, Sharda and other far-flung areas near the line of control, and it seemed like election euphoria there was even better than it was in Muzaffarabad or Mirpur or other big cities. Every bazaar, every shop, every restaurant were decorated with party flags, with posters, banners. And the one good thing, Farrukh, about Kashmir is, which we must celebrate, is the level of tolerance there. In Bazaar of Keel, shops, 3 shops in a row. One shop was decorated with PTI flag, another was with PPP, and the third one was PFLN. And there was no acrimony between all of them. They all were friends, they all were relatives, and they just enjoyed the funfair and the feverishness of the election here. Another thing, Farrukh, we must celebrate is the participation of women voters. I mean, in terms of candidates, that is true that only 20 candidates participated out of 700. But again, this number has also increased compared to the previous election. In 2016, there were only 8 women candidates, and now it's 20. And when I spoke to the female activists and the female even candidates, they all hope and they feel that in the next elections their number will be even bigger. So, and another thing,
I'm glad that you're talking about women voters as well, because when you look at the total number of registered voters, in that you see a discrepancy. Usually the population is 50-50, give or take 1% here or there. But this time the total number of women is 250,000 votes less than men. Why is it that women are underrepresented?
I was telling that point, and that is which we must encourage, and we must tell the people that the number of women voters are overwhelming in Kashmir, and their participation even bigger. They are very much part and parcel of the election process. They are their homes in big numbers, in crowds, and even before the start of the polling, they were in the queue, and they realized their responsibility as a election. Something that we must give. Number one, the violence. You have heard that at least 2 people have lost precious lives in both in the clash.
Just a minute, Amir Saab, let me ask the MCR to actually increase the volume of your call, because somehow I can make half of what you're saying. Now,
all right.
Okay, we are going to actually call you again just to connect to improve the quality of audio. Meanwhile, let me go to Barrister Safi. Barrister Safi, this concern about women participation is not alone peculiar to Kashmir. We have seen throughout the country, even in Karachi, a substantial discrepancy. Is there legal remedy to this?
There is no legal remedy at the moment for somehow increasing women voters, but
I was hoping that you are immediately going to quote me the Constitution of Pakistan, which gives women equal rights.
Well, yes, of course, that's what I'm saying. Women have the right to vote. There is no two ways about it. The problem is women, despite having that right, do not register to vote.
Okay.
And so we have a problem.
Out of free will?
Out of free will, obviously. It's not like they're being forced not to register. Nobody
family pressure might be there.
That's what I'm getting to, Pitafi Saab. So there's no legal pressure.
To the point
so obviously, because there is no legal bar on them not to register. There is, of course, cultural and societal issues and sometimes religious issues that prevent them from registering and prevent them from going out.
Cultural issues, and a constitution, remind me, is thought to be a social contract, is it?
It is, in fact, a social contract.
So is it not supposed to provide a social cure?
In fact, not only does it provide a social cure, it encourages active and increased participation of the women even above that of men. So the constitution clearly says that the state of Pakistan will strive to ensure that women, and it does not use the word men, it says women will participate in electoral processes and in the day-to-day affairs of the state.
Right.
So of course, because at the time of drafting of the constitution, it was understood that women are not participating sufficiently, so it made it incumbent upon the state to try and make changes that would do so. And so time and again,
the constitution was framed in 73.
Yes, and even then,
this is year 2021.
Unfortunately, that's where we stand. So it's clear that despite the constitution telling the state to ensure that there should be an increased participation of women and minorities, mind you, the word being used in the constitution is women and minorities. We consistently see an underrepresentation of women and minorities, religious minorities both, and that has a lot more to do with the way a society is structured than the way law is structured.
Right. And I'm going to come back to you. Amir Latif Saab has joined us again. Amir Saab, you were talking about women and this discrepancy. Can you tell us again, if you can repeat what you were saying, because I couldn't hear you properly earlier.
Yes, thank you, Farrukh. I was saying that there are a couple of things that need to be discouraged and rectified. Number one, the violence we saw at Kotli at a polling station where 2 people lost their precious lives, several people were injured, and also clashes were held at around a dozen of polling stations around Kashmir, which actually is not the tradition of Kashmir politics, and so it needs to be discouraged. The another thing is, when I covered the public meetings across Kashmir, I was taken aback by the language used by some opposition and the government politicians against each other. And I think this is again not the tradition of Kashmir and not the tradition of Pakistan as well. So this also needs to be discouraged. I would say, as if you asked me that who's gonna win, so very briefly I will say the party that rules Islamabad actually wins elections in Muzaffarabad.
Yeah, I've heard this refrain quite constantly. But since you were talking about you actually attending or covering party jalsas or public rallies, tell me, what is the situation of COVID in AJK at this moment? And given, at least I was observing this, looking at the visuals coming from those jalsas, that there was hardly any focus on social distancing, any mask wearing, or any measures to ensure that there is less COVID. Should we be, after this election, expecting an increase in numbers?
Unfortunately, you are very much true, and you have raised such a very important point that we had ignored, and we actually have ignored this. And if I tell you frankly speaking, I was the only one wearing masks at many places. Neither the politicians nor the public, and not even the general public in the bazaars and in the markets were following the SOPs. Unfortunately, our politicians, our leaders, including the government ministers, who were responsible to teach people, to tell people to wear masks, they themselves were not wearing the mask. And I am warning you, it's not my warning, it's the doctor's warning that coronavirus, the fourth, the wave of the coronavirus is equally dangerous. Hospitals in Karachi are filled to their capacity. So God forbid if, the fallout of this election lackluster, electioneering, crowded, the gatherings, if the fallout comes over, it spills over to Pakistan again, so that will be again a dangerous situation for Pakistanis. So we must...
And not only Pakistan, I mean Kashmiri diaspora is huge as well, and if it connects, UK is a country that has already kept Pakistan on red list, so that becomes a problem. Ahmed Sahib, do stay with us, allow me to go to the other guests, and let me ask Hasnat Sheikh about health and COVID. Who is going to be held responsible? Election Commission, political parties, or the poor Johnnies who actually attended those rallies?
I think we should start by holding responsible the person in Azad Kashmir who held up an NCOC notification in the year in a press conference and said, who is the NCOC to tell the Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir to follow SOPs?
Okay. Farrukh Haider?
Farrukh Haider literally did this before the election.
Okay.
Is this how a responsible Prime Minister is supposed to function? Is this how the executive head of the government there is supposed to function? How do you expect the other parties?
Why was this incident not flagged by the media?
It was to a certain extent, but because
local media,
not to local media, not widely national media, and specifically because Farrukh Haider tried to make it an issue of jurisdiction.
Okay.
Even though it was an issue of goodwill, it was an issue of national responsibility. Okay. It was an issue that should have been looked at from a humane perspective, not from an electoral perspective. Right. But they used a paper from the NCOC as an electoral tool. So that is the level of responsibility the AJK government was giving there. Though their vaccination scheme was much better than the rest of Pakistan, I give them that. They actually had a more efficient setup, but at a certain point, I remember I was in Muzaffarabad and they had started giving vaccines to people over 18 when we were giving vaccines to people over 40 in Islamabad. And I'm not sure, we were somewhere above 40 here in Islamabad. And the astonishing fact is that not everybody above 18 had already been vaccinated. They didn't have the right to go there, and 1 week later, they go back to 30 years.
Okay. SOPs. Did Election Commission also come up with some kind of SOPs regarding rallies?
There weren't any...
You are talking about jurisdiction, so that there you have Election Commission that can actually reissue the same SOP.
Right. So the Election Commission in Azad Kashmir didn't really echo the MCOC, because the Election Commission was made in the PMLN government first off.
Okay.
It's not made entirely independently. It does because it is constituted with the federation with the federal consultation taken in mind, but it is chiefly made by the PMLN
I don't want
government.
to dispute the election commission.
Yeah.
My only problem is COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, it kills people.
It does.
And if you are not taking precautions, your voters will be killed.
That's exactly it.
So nobody will be held responsible.
I think the Election Commission should be held responsible for this, and the leadership of Azad Kashmir should be held responsible
the
for this
former
directly.
leadership.
The former leadership and the leadership that did all their jalsas there, because everybody understands how these things
In
happen.
a couple of hours, it will cease to be the leadership of Azad Kashmir, because there will be a new government. Even if it is going to be the next government,
Right.
it will have to take some time to actually take over. There is a Safi cure for all these maladies. There has to be a legal
always a cure in the law, and I think I'll sort of talk about what was just being said here regarding the role of the Election Commission of Kashmir. Now, one thing that I recall was that the Election Commission of Kashmir, clearly when one particular minister of Pakistan threatened a woman and said that he'll slap her across the face, the Election Commission of Kashmir banned him from coming into Kashmir. And that ban was flouted with complete impunity. And that minister said, who is the Election Commission to tell me what to do? I will do whatever I want to do.
Right.
So, obviously, in such a scenario, if something of this sort were to happen, for instance, in the Election Commission of Pakistan, the Election Commission would immediately proceed by issuing contempt and maybe even using their powers to, get that person arrested for absolute
what you're
criminality.
saying is, because the Election Commission of Pakistan is empowered by law to do that.
And exactly.
Election Commission of Kashmir is not.
And so this is the problem that I have noticed time and again in Kashmir, which results in a large part of Kashmir's problems. Kashmir, if for instance the Election Commission of Kashmir fails, there is a Supreme Court of Kashmir, which would then take action. But if we were to look at the jurisprudence of Kashmiri Supreme Court's decision and how many of them have actually been taken into account, we see that the parties just don't care.
Okay.
In fact, not only do the political parties of Kashmir not care about the Supreme Court of Kashmir, the Supreme Court of Pakistan does not care about the Supreme Court of Kashmir. There is
don't actually.
No, I am not making any insinuation. With due respect, I am being very serious here because the Pakistani courts.
I don't want you to talk about the court supreme.
But I am talking about what the legal system is. I am genuinely talking about what the legal system is.
Okay.
In Pakistan, for instance, in the Rawalpindi Islamabad High Court, I cannot use.
Can we go back to Election Commission?
Hold on, I will get to.
I understand.
Yeah. I cannot use a precedent from the
if a
Supreme Court.
minister flouted whatever SOPs or orders were there, but does it stop you from issuing a new SOP for COVID?
It does not stop you from doing anything, but you can only do so if you're empowered by law to do something.
You're banning people from coming there.
The point I'm trying to make is that law can only work when people believe it is the law.
Right.
You cannot have an authority issuing notifications saying, oh, please listen to us, wear masks, have social distancing, if nobody listens to it. And it does not have any grounding in the law. That is what the situation in the Kashmiri Kashmiri Election Commission and the Kashmiri Supreme Court is. And vis-a-vis the acceptance in Pakistan. I don't know why you're being offended by this. I'm telling you what the law is. I am not making something up. A Kashmiri Supreme Court decision is not...
in the past program also, we discussed this issue. One, debating courts as if they are the common room next door is not healthy because that undermines their capacity.
On the contrary.
And secondly, they are empowered, and I don't want to end up in contempt. Please. Let me go back to Ahmed Latif Saab. Ahmed Saab, we are talking about something very serious, right? You also talked about MTOC and COVID, SOPs. Do you think that the Election Commission was clear in highlighting how to actually ensure that more people are not impacted?
The notification was very unfortunately. I'm not sure if the people pay attention to it or not. But on ground, what can the Election Commission do if the administration, if the Chief Secretary, if the IG Sindh, if the IG of Kashmir, and even the ministers from Islamabad and Prime Minister from Muzaffarabad, if any heat for DSO, what can the Election Commission do? I mean, I want to add to what Hasnath said. I mean, sorry, Election Commission or Raja Farrukh can alone not be held responsible for that. Our Prime Minister of Pakistan, the ministers, they all should be responsible. Who of them wearing masks there? None of them. I was there, I am telling you, I was the only person wearing masks then, or a few people there. When the IG of the Kashmir, when the Chief Secretary of Kashmir, when the ministers of Kashmir are not wearing the mask, who will compel or who will convince the people, the ordinary people in the markets and bazaars to wear the mask? So it is not the lone responsibility of the only Election Commission, but we all are responsible for that. What media? Did media highlight this? Never. Media was very much busy in covering big rallies and the inflammatory speeches against each other. I mean, hardly. It's only the PTV. I'm hearing this, that the PTV is raising this issue. Why COVID SOPs were not followed there? Otherwise, everybody is busy in celebrating and accusing each other.
All right. Now let us come back to the end game, and how many seats are going to be won by which party. Who do you see as leading? And if that party is leading by a big margin or only marginally, then second party, who do you think is going to be runners up, and which one is coming third?
Since 1975, this has been the tradition in Kashmir that the party ruling Islamabad wins Muzaffarabad. I don't see any change in this phenomena this time as well. So PTI is clearly in the lead. At this stage when we are talking at the moment, it is in the lead on 20 seats, clear lead, and it can win. Simple majority is on the cards. It's not far away, it's on the corner, but it can be converted into big margin as well. As far as the contest for the second position is concerned, there is a contest between PMLN and the PPP from the very first day for the second position, not for the first position, because the people of Kashmir, they have had this tradition to bring the party, same party which rules Islamabad, to Muzaffarabad because of certain reasons. They think that the party in Muzaffarabad can liberally issue funds, release funds for the development of Kashmir, and in case of any confrontation, the local development can be hurt or disturbed. So very clearly, I see PMLN on the second position, both in terms of votes and in terms of seats. And at some seats, if you are following the results, there is a close contest as well. Now the PTI is in the lead. However, the vote difference is in hundreds or in few thousands. So the other parties have also got their share in the election results, but I am seeing the Pakistan's ruling party is going to make the government in Muzaffarabad very comfortable.
Right, that is interesting. Let me go back to Hasnath. Who's winning? Who's number 2? Who's number 3? Who's number 4?
Currently, I'd assume that PTI will have a sharp margin.
Okay.
If out of somewhere around 50, it will carry somewhere around 20 plus minus 5.
Okay.
And
you realize that plus minus 5 actually changes the whole game. You need 27 seats out of 53 to 27 seats to form the government. Will it clear that barrier?
It will, with a tad bit of support.
Okay.
With a tad bit of local support from most likely from the Muslim Conference or Jammu Kashmir People's Party, not Pakistan's People's Party.
Not PMLN's 33 seat margin.
Not all.
Okay. Who's second?
I expect a People's Party or Muslim Conference to be second.
People's Party or Muslim Conference? Muslim Conference at this moment is, I think, number 4. At this moment, yes, but the trend in Muzaffarabad division that we are observing, Farrukh either might lose his own seat. Okay.
The current Prime Minister
One seat or both seats?
Both seats. the both seats that he's contesting. That's the update that I had before coming to studio.
Before coming to the studio,
Well,
I thought that he was comfortably winning. I don't know.
There might be a difference in local reports. Though Farrukh either might end up retaining one seat because he still is the former Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir.
He bifurcated his constituency.
Yes.
It was bifurcated because he has two sons.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that is
that would be a very strong statement to make because his sons are very old friends of mine. But even last night, it was very sad to see the propaganda that was happening there. They had allegations of dividing money. There were videos online of one of our friends who I'm not going to name here, but it's very sad that you have a government for 5 years, and one night before the election, your son is in a video and somebody claims that he's distributing that money. It should be looked into, the correctness of it should be looked into, but if it is true,
being distributed among voters. I mean, are there any laws barring that?
There are several laws barring that.
Okay.
The Election Commission does have that jurisdiction, and I'd like to, though I also have a legal background, unfortunately, I'm not a barrister yet, because it has a huge weight on the conscience.
Okay.
Because when you see these things happening, you can't always intervene, even though you know that it's wrong. If I can take a minute to go back to that point.
If you want to actually take it as a burden, look at him.
But I'd like to go back to his point, if you can render me a minute.
Okay.
The Election Commission of Azad Kashmir is empowered. It has already disqualified a lot of sitting ministers in Azad Kashmir, and it has taken away the money that they've given them. Even their salaries have been taken back, confiscated. Their cars have been confiscated, and that's not just it. When we talk about the courts, I don't want to go into that again. That is an irrelevant of it. But the courts in Azad Kashmir are empowered. The government of Azad Kashmir has historically gone in appeal to the Supreme Court of Pakistan to restore decisions in its favor against the court of Azad Kashmir, because the state of Azad Kashmir has a different type of allegiance with Pakistan that most policymakers from Pakistan sometimes overlook. That the state is empowered. The people there are empowered, the Election Commission is empowered. But there is incompetency there. That's where these issues come up.
Right, political incompetence notwithstanding. At this moment, you didn't tell me who was going to be number 3, number 4.
Number 3 is, 2 or 3 is Muslim Conference of People's Party, PMLN is at 4th.
Okay. How many seats PMLN?
PMLN would be lucky to get somewhere around 6. 6 would be lucky.
Wow, that's a big fall.
Yeah.
Really, Humpty Dumpty fall, right?
It is also karma.
Yeah, why so?
Because PMLN was created from a local party, which gave the same minister's government several times. This PMLN government had been in government with Sardar Atiq several times. And these people left that party with Nawaz Sharif. That party was extremely pro-Pakistan. That party was also considered historically Qaid-e-Azam's party in Azad Kashmir.
Right.
And when that party broke up, that party was left to 4 or 5 seats. Even though it was the greatest opposition in the last election, 4 or 5 seats, because PMLN had a massive win. But it will turn back there because the same happened through PTI to PMLN.
Right. Better Sir Safi, coming back to how much the people who are living in Islamabad know about Kashmir. You watch television?
On and off, yes.
Yeah, on and off. Okay. Do you follow news?
I try to.
How aware are you about Kashmiri issues as a common viewer?
As a common viewer, I have to be honest and admit that I am not, in fact, too concerned about the way things happen in Kashmir. And even though I should be, because of course Kashmir is an important issue. It always has been. It's in fact one of the cornerstones of Pakistan's policies, generally domestic and foreign. But the reality is that because of the way Kashmir is structured, because of the legal structures, as far as I am concerned, because I agree, by the way, with what Hassan just said. I do agree. When I said that they are not empowered, I did not by that mean that they do not have any legal basis by which to do so. But the way it happens, and I could go into further detail, they might have the legal basis and the legal wherewithal to work in Kashmir, but many things are just not followed. And that's one of the reasons why it happens. My personal experience is that whenever I have, for instance, tried to use Kashmiri court judgments here in Pakistan for anything, they are disregarded by the courts, and not just disregarded, in fact outright rejected as not being a part of our jurisprudential system. And so that was the point I was trying to make, that because Kashmir does not necessarily fall into Pakistan's jurisprudential system.
Never try stopping a lawyer from making a point. He'll end up there, right?
That's not the point I'm trying to make.
Well, but I'm about to make a point, and that is very humble.
Sure.
I'm told that we have to start concluding the program. So I'm going to ask you first to give your conclusion.
I think this election is very important because of the singular reason that Imran Khan promised that there would be a plebiscite. A plebiscite is long overdue in Kashmir. The Kashmiris have the right to now speak on whether they want an independent state or whether they want to be in Pakistan, and it's just a great example for an Indian occupied Kashmir.
Right.
And this is why I would think that if PTI were to win and if PTI were to carry out on its promise, this would be one of the best things that have happened in Pakistan.
And people generally need food, road, healthcare, electricity,
that the Kashmiris decide how they want that. Yes, and I think Kashmiris.
Anyone actually promising that at all?
I think, as always, I've seen promises of water. I did watch some speeches on
water as well. Water is a big issue.
Water dams. I saw some issue.
Clean drinking water.
Yes,
is an issue at places.
That's what I said. So when listening to political speeches,